Hey guys, welcome. Hope you have had a great weekend. This is the second video for Chapter 13. We're going to continue to talk about experiments and observational studies. To start off with, I want to mention the four important principles of experimental design. The first is control. When you run an experiment, the goal is, similar to an observational study, to see what the effect of a factor or an environmental feature has upon the response variable, the thing you want to see change. Last time in the first Chapter 13 video, I talked about the influence of milk versus non-milk on height. Okay, and when you've got a group of people who you want to keep track of related to their height, you want to make sure that the only thing that could change those people's heights, of all the things you can account for, will be the milk. Okay, so control is making sure all aspects of the experiment are controlled, which could affect the response variable, but the factor or factors of interest. Okay, I'm not going to write this out just for the sake of saving time. You can pause and write that down yourself if you want before we go on to randomization. That's what I'm going to do when I introduce each of these concepts today. You can pause, you can write these down yourself, but I'm not going to write them down today. Randomization, just as with surveys, we randomize to avoid bias. We can't account for, or can't control. My throat's really scratchy right now. So, yeah, we want to control, and as we said in part 1, to make sure that the only thing changing the participants in the experiment is the factor, but we can't control everything. So we randomize the participants, or if the participants are not people, we call them experimental units. We randomize the participants or experimental units to avoid any bias that we can't account for. Okay, replication. Replication refers to a couple of things. First of all, it refers to us wanting to make sure that we have lots of participants. We don't run the treatment or the treatments of an experiment upon 1 or 2 or 3 people. You try to make sure that you have plenty of participants so that the results are generalizable, but you can see that they are indeed affecting a fair amount of people. Okay, it adds legitimacy to your experimental results if you replicate a treatment. In this case, let's go back to last video when we talked about the effects of drinking milk. Replicate the treatment of milk drinking for lots of people. Replicate the treatment of not drinking milk for lots of people. And by doing that, rather than assigning milk drinking to one person, non-milk drinking to one person, you can generalize. Okay, blocking is something we really hadn't got into last time. Blocking is a little bit like stratifying for surveys, in the sense that with blocking, you're saying, okay, let's go back to the milk example, the experiment where we're trying to give people milk or not give people milk to see how that affects their heights. Well, if I have 30 people and 10 of them are already tall before I conduct the experiment, 10 are mid-height and 10 are short, I would block them so that I would say, okay, my group of 30 is going to be subdivided into those 3 groups. The 10 tall, the 10 of moderate height, and the 10 who are short. Okay, and then from there, we will randomly assign to get your 1, 2 treatments. Okay, you're going to assign milk or not drinking milk for each of those 10 groups. So it's as if you have multiple groups of participants, you're assigning those 2 treatments to. Okay, so it allows you to make comparisons about the effects of milk within those size categories A, but it also allows you to learn about it avoids having a whole bunch of previously tall people not drink milk, still wind up being taller, and your results be biased as a result. Okay, so blocking takes your participants and splits them up in ways we know that they are dissimilar, so that the treatments will still work out and you can still make comparisons. Excuse me, I have no idea why my throat is so scratchy right now. There are 3 essential experimental designs to be aware of. Completely randomized, which that is like simple random sample, I suppose, in the sense that you take your participants, let's say we've got 30 people who are willing to participate in a milk drinking or not milk drinking experiment. You just randomly assign them to the 2 different treatment groups of drinking milk or not drinking milk. Okay, so it'd be 15 and 15, and you don't really care with complete random assignment who's tall, who's not. Okay, blocking we just talked about, and then matched experimental design would be something like the following. Let's say that we're really fortunate and we have a whole bunch of twins who are willing to participate in this milk drinking experiment. And matching would say, okay, it's a little bit like blocking. You say, well, okay, each pair of twins is certainly a similar group as long as they're identical twins. I mean, fraternal twins don't have to be, are not so genetically similar, but identical twins are so similar genetically that we could just say, well, for every 2 twins, we'll randomly assign one to milk drinking, the other will not drink milk, and do that for every matched pair of twins. And there too, it keeps us from, if we were doing a complete random assignment, having both twins go to the same treatment, which would make it hard to compare to people in the other treatment group. If we know that these twins are automatically sort of controlled to be similar in so many ways, but the milk drinking, which we can affect, then we'll match them up and split their treatment separately, and then make our comparisons after the experiment's done based upon all those paired twins. Okay, last but not least regarding experiments, before we start to look at some example problems after we talk just a hair about observational studies. Blinding refers to conducting an experiment in such a way that either A, the participants, or B, the researchers, are unaware of treatments given to different groups. This is done to help remove human bias from the experiment's results. So blinding could be what's a placebo, or maybe you guys have heard of, if not a placebo, I bet most of you have though, like a sugar pill. If your doctor if your doctor has ever given you or someone you know a sugar pill, then they're treating you for something. It's sometimes done for hypochondriacs, for people who think that they're sick all the time. Oh, doctor, I've got this, I've got that. We'll just give them a sugar pill, which is has no real medicine in it at all, and just by virtue of taking something that the doctor has prescribed, their perception of reality will change in such a way that psychologically they'll be improved and their health will improve as a result. We know that mental well-being does translate to physical well-being and vice versa. So that's one example of blinding that occurs. Now, that's outside of experiments, but that's blinding that occurs within the medical field. Placebos can be used in experiments, and I believe we'll see an example of that today when we get through the notes. Blinding more generally, though, is just where either the people conducting the experiment or the people who are the participants don't know if they're the people conducting the experiment, they don't know which treatment that they're assigning the participants, or if it's the participants who are being blinded, the participants don't know which treatment they're being assigned. Okay, so you can have single blinding, which would be either the people conducting are assigning treatments without knowing which treatment they're giving the participants, or single blinding could also be the participants are not aware of the treatment they're being given, or you can double blind, which is even more powerful, and that has both the treatments being given from the from the people conducting the experiment without them knowing what treatment they're giving, and the participants don't know what treatment they're giving. It's hard to do. But the purpose behind blinding is to remove sort of that psychological factor. Okay, when you blind, it's not clear. It's not clear what exactly is being done, and so it removes your own perceptual bias from the experiment. Okay, and that's good, because that means that if, for instance, we care to see the effects that drinking milk or not drinking milk has upon people's heights, well, that means that that's the only variable, the only factor that can actually change people's heights. Okay, so there's blinding. Okay, a little bit on studies here real quick. An alternative to conducting an experiment, which we've talked about these, is to analyze the effects of a factor upon our experimental units, is to run an observational study. In an observational study, we simply record or observe the factor of interest effects upon a group we'd like to analyze. Observational studies do not manipulate the environment for participants to control the effects of the factor of interest. They come in two basic varieties: retrospective studies, which is a study in which participants are selected and their previous conditions or behaviors are determined, or prospective studies, where participants are selected to follow their future outcomes. Okay, so maybe you guys have heard the term, the way I try to keep these things straight, I guess I think of retroactive. Retroactive would be something where you're saying something has taken effect, even though it hadn't taken effect in the past, you're acting as if it had. And the key word there is past, with retroactive being a sort of past rules or past procedures. Retrospective study similar, in that you're looking at past information. Prospective is future information. But we talked about how observational studies are not generalizable results like experiments are, because they don't randomize to remove bias. Okay, so that's a drawback of the observational study. I'll put that over here. Non-random. And therefore non-generalizable. What do I mean by non-generalizable? Well, if we, instead of conducting the experiment over the course of 4 years to see if drinking milk or not drinking milk will influence people's heights, we just looked at people's heights based upon whether or not they claim to have drank milk or not drank milk, then the bias of people perhaps just being taller due to their parents, any inadvertent misinformation they may be feeding us, maybe they're not drinking milk as much as they claim they were, all of that, that control in actually determining if milk is affecting their heights, we're giving up to the observational study. We're using the information. We're letting reality run its course. We're not randomizing to remove bias, and therefore we can't make conclusions about drinking milk or not drinking milk and its effects upon people's heights for other populations outside of the participants in the observational study. Okay, so there's one drawback, non-random. The other problem too is, especially with retrospective study, accuracy of information. Okay, and in that sense I mean that it's pretty hard to know if, let's say you're looking at records of people in the 1950s, and for some reason there was like a calamity that happened right after World War II, and you're wanting to analyze the effects of that calamity upon people in a certain area. I don't know. Let's say that I'm blanking on the battle. I can't think of the battle. It's disappointing to me. Normandy. Yeah, let's say that something had happened at Normandy where there was almost like a biological impact in the area, and you wanted to see maybe there was biological warfare that had been used, chemical weapons had been used, and people had been injured who were civilians in the area just from the use of those biological weapons. Well, if all you're doing is you're going back and you're looking at like medical records from the 1950s and maybe long-term effects of these biological weapons around the Battle of Normandy, you're giving up. You have to submit that your records are true, or just kind of throw them all out. I mean, you didn't take the records yourself, so there could be accuracy issues. Long story short. Okay, so the benefits of observational studies: it's cheap. You don't have to take the time, so it's less time intensive. How to say that? Time cheap as well. Maybe that's a really weird way to put it. It doesn't take much time. It doesn't cost much material resources to run an observational study because you're looking at other people's environment, circumstances. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, so for the next 4 examples, we're going to go with the following instructions. I'll let you look through these. It looks pretty dense. It's really not that bad. All we're doing is we're analyzing first. Is the example an observational study or is it an experiment? And then if it's an observational study, we'll break it down according to 4 things, including retrospective or prospective, subject studied, parameter of interest, nature and scope, etc., etc. With an experiment, we're going to break it down similarly. Okay, so with example 1, we're told and I will write these out. Let me get to where I wrote these. Okay. Over a 4-month period, among 30 people with bipolar disorder, patients who were given a high dose, which was 10 grams per day, of omega-3 fats from fish oil improved more than those given a placebo. So the first question is this an experiment or is this an observational study? Well, just ask yourself the following question. Did the environment for these people get changed or did it not get changed? Yeah, it sure did. People were given a dose of this omega-3 fatty acid, or the fats from fish oil, or they were given a placebo. So clearly that's an experiment. Okay, second thing asked about is the participants in the experiment. That would be the 30 people with bipolar disorder. Then they want to know the factor or factors. The factor is just singular in this case. The placebo is not a separate environmental thing that's being issued. You think of the factor as just the omega-3 fat. Omega-3 fats, and they want to know the number of levels. That's what changes. The levels are, think of, level is easiest to conceptualize as the dosage of your factor. So if the factor is the thing that you're changing in the environment to see how people or things respond to it, the level is the dosage of it. Well, we've got 2 dosages here. You've got the 10 grams per day, or you've got 0 grams per day in the form of the placebo. Okay? So there's C. On to D, they want to know the number of treatments. Well, that in this case lines up really easily with the levels of the factor. Okay, you've got 2 treatments. You either receive the omega-3 fats or you receive the placebo. Okay. E, they want to know. I think it's the response variable. Yeah, response variable measured. Okay. So what are they comparing and contrasting in this experiment once people have received their treatment for the 4-month period? Well, they're comparing the bipolar disorder severity. Okay, has it improved? If so, how much? How did those people compare to the other group that did or did not receive the omega-3 fats, etc., etc. Okay, so on to F here. They want to know the type of randomization, I believe, or maybe the experimental design. Yeah, the design. Is it completely randomized, blocked, or matched? Well, they don't really specify. That is, they have not said how they're assigning people to their treatments. So we'll say that, unspecified. There's F, on to G. They want to know about whether or not it's blind. Well, yeah, it is in this case because And we would say that this is at least single blind. It may be double blind in the sense that the people conducting the experiments don't know which participants they're giving what treatment or not. But it's single blind because you have the participants being given a placebo. Okay, so a placebo is only a placebo as long as people don't know it's a placebo. That is to say, a placebo is what it is when the people taking it are unaware that it's insignificant. Okay, so then let's go to last little bit here in H. They want to know about, I think it's generalizability next. We can, from the setup of this experiment, we can learn about bipolar disorder improving with omega-3 fat consumption. Okay? We cannot, and this is good to talk about, we cannot generalize to the population at large because we only looked at people with bipolar disorder. We can, however, know that omega-3 fats have actually improved their bipolar disorder. Okay, so that's a cool result. All right, let's go on to example 2 here. The leg muscles of men aged 60 to 75 were 50 to 80% stronger after they participated in a 16-week high-intensity resistance training program twice a week. Okay, so is this an experiment? Is this an observational study? Well, here too, you're changing their environment, so this has to be an experiment. Secondly, who are the people being studied? Well, we know men aged 60 to 75. We don't know how many though. Okay? And then third thing that they want to know is the factor. Well, the factor is the training program here. That's the thing that you're administering to the environment. And then they ask for the number of levels. There's actually only one level here. Okay? Everyone gets the same treatment, which answers question D, how many treatments are there? Of course, there's only one. Everyone receives this high-intensity resistance training program. Okay? On to E, I think the response variable. They're measuring leg strength. We don't know how, but that's what they're measuring. And then in F, we want to know about the design type. Okay, here. This is a matched design. Why is it matched? Well, because what they've done is they're comparing, let's say you are a man in this age range. Your leg strength is going to be gauged, is going to be looked at before this high-intensity resistance training program. Then, at the end of the 16 weeks, you will be looked at again. So you're being compared to yourself. Okay? Think back to the twins. If you had twins who were identical twins, you could assign them to basically 2 different treatments and then compare how they do after those 2 treatments. Here, you've only got a single treatment. But prior to joining this high-intensity resistance training program, you didn't have the treatment. Okay, so it is, think of it as being kind of like the placebo above. Okay, you didn't have access to the resistance training program, so that was sort of your first treatment, quote unquote. And then they measure your strength. Then they give you the program, measure your strength again. Okay, so it's a matched design. Excuse me. I'm sure that's coming through real loud on the speaker. G, they want to know whether or not it's a blind or double-blind study. No, not really possible. I don't know how you give men this resistance training program without them knowing. That would be awesome if you could do it, but I don't think it's possible. Let's see, H here, they want to know about generalizability. Okay, so we can generalize and say that the training program improves leg strength for men in that age range. that's what I wrote, but now that I'm thinking about it, I have been talking about the importance of randomness. I don't see that anywhere here. I would probably add the caveat. I would say lack of randomness. I would add this exception. May make the results only generalizable to 60 to 75-year-old men who are like the participants. Why? Well, we don't really know the pool of people that we got to work with, and because they all got the same treatment here, it is hard to generalize to the population. We certainly can't go outside of the age range of 60 to 75 in terms of understanding that the strength program will actually improve leg strength. But perhaps these men were all very, I don't know, kind of sit around, kind of on the lazier side, didn't do a whole lot, and just by getting up, they could have had this same leg strength improvement. Maybe if you looked at more active men in the age range from 60 to 75, you would not see these same results. So understanding who we're looking at is important here. All right, example 3. In a test of roughly 200 men and women, those with moderately high blood pressure did worse on tests of memory and reaction time than those with normal blood pressure. Well, hopefully we realize pretty quick that this is an observational study, because you cannot, you can't require that people have high blood pressure, or you can't enforce that upon someone's environment. That's a little bit silly. Okay, so there's part A and B here. This is a prospective study because it certainly looks like the blood pressure is being recorded. Then you're taking your test of memory and reaction time. Okay, so you are collecting your participants, then you're running the test yourself. Okay, on to C here. Who are the people in the study? Well, 200 men and women. And they want to know how these people were found. That's not stated. We don't really know. Okay, D here. What are the parameters of interest? What are the things we're keeping track of that are changing with regard to this blood pressure? That would be the memory and reaction time. In E, they ask us, how can we generalize? Well, I don't want to really write this out. Without randomizing, we can't generalize past these people because bias may be present, okay? We don't know if these 200 people are like the population at large. We don't know, too, if what has affected their blood pressure. There's a lot that's just kind of left up in the air. We're not controlling much here. We're just recording whether or not they have the high blood pressure and then gauging their memory and reaction time. Okay, so again, getting back to the problems with observational studies. Observational studies do not allow you to generalize to the population at large. And fundamentally, I guess you can say that that's because of the lack of randomness. Without randomness, you can't cover up bias that you may not account for, even though here there's no bias present that I can account for just by looking at this. Randomness allows you to cover that bias up or deal with it, correct it, even when you can't account for it. Okay, so when you come to a question on a quiz or a test, and they ask you as to what sort of generalizability an observational study has, regardless of whether or not it's retrospective or prospective, you need to mention that There could be lurking bias here. There could be bias behind the scenes that is affecting the results that you can't know about, and the lack of randomness does not allow you to account for that hidden bias. Okay, last one here. Weight is an issue for both humans and their pets. A dog food company wants to compare a new low-cal food with their standard dog food to see if it's effective in helping inactive dogs maintain a healthy weight. They have found several dog owners willing to participate in the trial. The dogs have been classified as small, medium, or large breeds. The company will supply some owners of each size of dog with one of the two foods. The owners have agreed not to feed their dogs anything else for a period of 6 months, after which the dogs' weights will be checked. Okay, so clearly it's an experiment here, because you are giving these dogs one of two different types of dog food. We are studying dogs. We don't know how many. They certainly seem to be domesticated if they got owners. What are the factors? Well, there are two here. You've got a standard food and a low-cal food. Okay? And because, now this is perhaps, I'm going to make a little bit of a stretch here, but I think the logic is going to make sense. They have grouped these dogs into either small, medium, or large breeds. Okay? Well, what's the purpose behind that? If they're trying to measure the dog's weights, if that's the response variable that they want to compare between each of these groups of small, medium, or large breeds, if they've blocked by small, medium, or large, and they want to compare the dog's weights, that must be because they're not going to feed all the small dogs just as much as the large dogs. That would defeat the purpose of trying to use this low-cal food. So, if they've got two different things they're willing to administer, the standard food or the low-cal food, there must therefore be 3 levels apiece. The levels would be small amount of food for the small dogs, medium amount of food for medium dogs, and large amount of food for the large dogs, for both standard food and low-cal food. Okay? On to D. They want to know about the number of treatments. Well, if you've got small, medium, and large dogs getting 3 different types of amounts of food, and you've also got those small, medium, and large dogs getting the standard food or the low-cal food, there must therefore be 3 times 2, or 6 treatments in all. Okay? On to E. They want to know about the response variable. Well, that one's not too bad. That's got to be the dog's weights. F here, they want to know if it's about the design type. This is blocked. They took the dogs and grouped them up by their weights, which is certainly a factor that's going to influence the response variable. So that makes sense. G here, what? Oh, that's for blinding. We don't really know if there's been any blinding here. So we'll just go ahead and say not stated. Maybe it could be reasonably inferred that there is none, but it's not clear from what I saw. So H here, they want to know about generalizability. The experiment can determine if standard or low-cal food will better maintain dogs' weights for the 3 size categories listed of small, medium, and large. So there too, the only thing that could hurt the generalizability, like we saw last slide, is what these dogs are like. They are being... No, I'm sorry, that doesn't. Not really. As long as the dogs are pulled from the dog population in such a way that they're not like all Bichons or all Labs or all Dalmatians, etc., etc., the fact that we've cut them in, well, that's weird, grouped them into small, medium, or large breeds, and then randomly assign from those 3 blocks the diet type that they're going to get, we actually can generalize pretty well to the whole population here of dogs, and to determine best food given a particular dog size. Okay, that's where I'm going to stop with the video for now. I want to keep it under 40 minutes, but then for examples 5 and 6, which are also in the notes, we'll just hit those next time in class together to round this out. I want you to try them on your own, see what you can do.